Hey, I'm Tommy Colletti. I own the Music Zoo here in New York. I'm here with the one and only Mike Eldred from the Fender Custom Shop. And it seems like every time he comes here, even though we're here to do Fender business, I always wind up talking about Charvel business with him. And it's always like, hey man, look at this guitar. I found this guitar, and a customer walked in with it and I bought it. And what's significant about this and what happened with that? And so I'm just full of questions for him. So he was nice enough to sit here with me and just kind of go through some of the days, the Charvel days, you know, like when stuff was really happening there and history was being made. You were a part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I was Grover's first employee hired. I think I was 18 or something like that. We looked at, I have my original application. They gave it to me when Fender bought the company. They gave me all that stuff, and on it, I think it was January '78, so I was 18, and when they hired me, and you know, Eddie Van Halen had given me the phone number because I would go see Van Halen at Gazzari's and the Whiskey and stuff, and he showed up with the black and white striped guitar. First there was a '64 Strat, and then he showed up that he had put a humbucker in, and then he showed up with this black and white Strat, and I was like, is that the same guitar? He goes, no, I got this from Charvel's, and he started telling me how they make bodies and necks. I was like, oh, I want to get a body and neck, you know, and whatever. And so he gave me the number, and then I called to get a guitar made, and I was getting a guitar built, and I kept going up there and paying Grover money on the guitar, and then finally, you know, I just said, hey, you know, I really need a job that's like 9 to 5, so that I could practice and play in a band at night. And so Grover hired me there, and you know, ever since
history.
Then, yeah.
And you know, like off camera, we were talking about some of the people that have walked into the you know, the factory.
Yeah.
Besides the Eddies, and who were some of the people that were walking in?
Gary Moore would come in. He came in a couple times, or he came in at least once. You know, of course, you'd have all the metal bands in the '80s, but early on, it was, you know, it was interesting because you'd get like Bryan Adams' guitars were down there. We were making stuff for them. We made a bunch of stuff for Pink Floyd. You got to remember the Charvel factory. Grover was making necks for Music Man. He was making necks for G&L. Nice. You know, at certain times we were making SD Curly guitars at one time.
I remember those. Sure.
And I was just like, man, it was just so bizarre because people would say, "Oh, can you make this?" And we would do it, you know. And Mighty Might, all the DiMarzio stuff, we were making all that stuff. But like Gary Moore came in, and he was cool because he dug around in the wood piles, which was great. We really liked that. We didn't like people who came in and just kind of, hey, I'm a rock star or whatever. Right. Gary got into it, you know. And we made a couple guitars for Gary. You know, Vinny Cassano was his name back then, and when he got into Kiss, we made a bunch of guitars for him, and you know, a bunch of people just left and right. You know, all the guys from Wasp, like I said, all the metal bands. You know, it was just nonstop. You'd see people come in all the time, and then of course, you know, Gibbons. You know, you would get a postcard from Gibbons like once a month. You know, from some obscure place or something, and we would always make stuff for them very early on.
Wow. Wow. Now, what about the necks? You know, the shape of the neck, and was there, you know, like I have like a go-to neck here that
Sure.
I use to bring to Charvel to say, hey, let's build guitars like this. But was there a go-to neck back then? Was it an old Strat or?
No. What it was is we would sit back. Like this is an old neck. This is a guitar that I built actually a long time ago. This was a guitar for a guy named Night Bob, and what we would do is we would just find a nice shape in here based on a bunch of different stuff that we liked, that Grover liked, that I liked, and we would just find a nice shape of a neck that we went in here and what people were asking for and everything. And you know, my primary function when I first got in there ended up being neck shaper, and I would shape all the necks, and that was all done on a belt sander and everything. And I had hair down to here one time, and I got my hair cut in the belt.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. They still have it down there too, and it's like Shannon always says stuff to me. It was like, hey, there's the machine that tore your hair out.
Oh man.
Anyways, so what we would do is we would shape stuff, and like Phil Taylor from Pink Floyd came in, and we were making a guitar when Pink Floyd was doing The Wall. We had made this telly, this 2-pickup telly for David Gilmour, and so they brought in a 55 Esquire, and ask me to shape necks on it. So I would have people like standing behind me, a little bit like this or a little bit like that. So I would measure the original one, and then I would hand them stuff. I'd say, okay, what do you think? And we were matching stuff all the time. I had a piece of paper that I had stuck on the wall, and anytime somebody brought in like a 64 Strat or something, I would measure it. I had calipers with me. I'd measure it. I'd write down the shape. Sometimes I'd shape a neck like that, and we would keep it. And that stayed on there until I left, and I never knew what happened to it. And Donnie Wade brought it to me the other day, and he said, "Here."
Wow.
And I still have it. It's really,
that's great.
It's really cool. So, but this shape, what this was, we wanted a wider neck. So, the early necks were 1 3/4. And a lot of it came from the Boogie Bodies stuff that we do, which was a 1 3/4 wide neck. And then we would just flatten out the back of it a little bit and make it a nice flat,
right,
like a flat shape. Because people were playing like this back then.
Right.
Everybody was playing like that. So that's really kind of what they wanted. It was more like a classical shape. But we did all kinds of shapes, But that was really kind of the one that people kind of stuck with.
Remembered, right?
Yeah.
What about the phenolic nut? Like, what was the? What is it?
This is funny because these. I saw a picture of one. Grover sent me a picture of a guitar that we made a while back, and there was a green nut in it. And the green nuts, we did some of the green nuts first. And what this stuff is it's circuit board material. And it's really strong. It has a real nice bright sound. It's easier to work with than brass. I mean, the early stuff was brass nuts.
Right.
But these, they didn't bind up because there was like this resin in a phenolic nut that it just doesn't, they don't bind up. They last a long time. I mean, this nut's been on this guitar, since the 80s or something like that. It's still good and all that. Where it was a bone nut, it's an organic material, so it'll wear through, at some point.
Right.
So these worked out really good. The green nuts were really hard. I remember dropping those on a table and just hear them go plink, plink, plink. They sound like glass.
Right.
But they were really, really
I
great.
don't know if I've ever seen one of those.
Yeah, I have a picture of one. The collectors out there, they'll know what
They'll know what it is. Yeah, I've never.
They'll be
seen
calling you like, "Hey, we gotta get some."
If it doesn't
green."
have the green one, I don't want
That's
it.
right, exactly. So, but we ended up using this brown material for a long time.
And the green stuff was phenolic. It was
Same
also
stuff.
it was
It was just stuff we bought. I mean, you bought a sheet of it, and then you would take it out and you'd mill it out for a nut, and then we'd have a box of them. And when you're done with that, you use different phenolic.
Right.
Probably has the same characteristics, just look different. And it was interesting that Grover didn't really care that it was green. Who had green? Oh, that sounds bad. Who has green nuts? Anyways,